Okay, here we go. Introducing the show.
This is fun. I like this.
Landon, I'm going to let you take over once he answers.
Hello?
And he's answered.
Logan.
Hello?
This is Landon.
From the Speech Guys.
Why'd you call on an unknown number?
You're live on the Speech Guys. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show, Logan.
Where it's such an honor to have you, Logan. Logan, let me explain something. Landon missed last episode. So what we're doing is really providing some of our audience fans an opportunity to introduce the episode. Father Danny McShane did a stellar job last time. It gained us a lot of fans. Or no, let me put it another. We only lost 20 fans for the previous episode. And we're just sort of hoping if you'd like to take a few minutes here to introduce us, introduce the episode, and give a little tip of the hat to your fellow Speech Guy fans.
So to the Speech Guys tonight, is all four members on the call? Three members on the call?
Four, mind you.
Four. Michael Schaefer, Ross Johnson, Matt Schultz, and Landon Fry are all here this evening.
Free.
Well, anytime we put something out on the interweb, we mispronounce the last name just in case, the content down the road doesn't align.
What?
Tonight's topic is what?
David Foster Wallace. This is Water. And this is episode number 21.
We're dabbling into the author of Infinite Jest this fine evening.
We are. You know your works.
Who selected this particular individual to discuss?
We're in a series about speeches before death, and David Foster Wallace did take his own life in 2008, and so this was a speech a few years before that foreshadowed some of the weightier topics of his message.
And which of the four members who picked this? Like, don't you have a
answer
one
the
of
question,
the four?
Landon?
Yours truly.
That does not surprise me with this group.
Hey, Logan, it's been great. Thanks for taking the time to introduce us. Okay, can you sort of finish with like your own little like twirl or something like? And the moment you've been waiting for, here's the Speech Guides, and then we cue the music, something like that. Okay, are you ready?
Yes, appreciate the two of you that are still listening to this, and hope you stay on for the duration of tonight's discussion.
And cue the music.
When you see the road from every direction, it will give you eyes, give you hope, it'll give you perspective. I've been back and forth, and yeah, I had my crashes. Now I've seen the road, it goes every direction.
So tonight we are talking about David Foster Wallace's This is Water. It was a commencement speech. When was the last time? Have we hit a commencement speech in a while? Not really.
Like on Earth? Oh, on
We did Steve Jobs, but that was
our golden members only.
The recording.
So this was in 2005 at Kenyon College, a couple years before his inevitable passing. I'll start off and read an excerpt. I'll start off and read an excerpt of it, and then we'll dive in. This is
or listen to it really from him on the real audio.
We'll start off and listen to an excerpt from towards the end of the speech.
Not that mystical stuff's necessarily true. The only thing that's capital T true is that you get to decide how you're going to try to see it. This, I submit, is the freedom of real education, of learning how to be well-adjusted. You get to consciously decide what has meaning and what doesn't. You get to decide what to worship. Because here's something else that's weird but true. In the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there is actually no such thing as atheism. There is no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And a compelling reason for maybe choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship, be it JC or Allah, be it Yahweh or the Wiccan mother goddess or the Four Noble Truths or some inviolable set of ethical principles, is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. It is about the real value of a real education, which has almost nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with simple awareness. Awareness of what is so real and essential, so hidden in plain sight all around us all the time, that we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over, this is water. This is water.
All right, so we listened to the end of the speech, but what we didn't uncover was, at least right off the bat, does everyone know kind of the namesake of the speech's title? And that is a simple anecdote. Older fish is swimming in the sea. Two young fish come along, the older fish turns to them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" The two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over the other and goes, "What the hell is water?" And then DFW goes on to really describe perhaps the simple things, the essence of life, and how so much of our existence is perhaps in an environment like a fish in water that we don't notice, that we take for granted, that we probably don't focus on, and gets very, I would say, philosophical in the nature throughout the speech, as you heard. And I would sum up here with the reason that I picked it. I think where our theme is speeches before death, his unfortunate circumstance certainly serves as a reason to take a look at this one. And this is a speech we've been thinking about doing for a while. We didn't know where to fit it in. We've talked about it before, and even going back years ago to our late night evenings together in person when we all lived together. And it's always captivated somewhat of our attention. I think the reason that I chose it to look at, and the reason perhaps I've been fascinated with David Foster Wallace, is he seemed to have the strongest sense of perhaps Christian truths or Christian priorities, or the way, maybe the way to live, or the kinds of things to value without being a Christian. And I don't know, seemed to always bring a lot of morality or grounded.
Hey, Landon, as a brief aside, as not being Christian, he did attend church with the Mennonites.
Yeah.
Who was it?
Correct.
Okay. And another fun fact, he also tried to convert to Catholicism twice.
So I knew he attended the church. It seemed like he always described it more of, was able to value it for its social purposes and kind of connections with people advancing. I mean, he certainly tried to understand it, but he would have never called himself a Christian.
But you follow what I said. He did try to convert, which implies a certain level up from just social functionality of it. Mm-hmm. But I think, as I remember, and this wasn't even preparing for the speech. This was some months ago, probably on some rabbit trail from another speech night prep. But he it was something like he failed the skeptic test or doubt test or something like that. But
oh, really?
I don't know. There is something that's still just really striking about that idea. So yeah, just something interesting to think about.
Yep. So I'll stop there. Reading it for the first time, I know, guys, we read it 6-7 years ago. what struck you now versus then? Did you come around on it? What really pulled your attention from his message this time?
Something that kind of jumped out to me was I feel like I took different, like I felt like I just had a different overall feel for it now versus when we listened to it those years ago. So the first time we covered it, I was still in grad school, so I'm still kind of the college graduate that he was speaking to in the speech itself, in the commencement speech, you know. So his overall theme, I guess, I mean, the idea of what's really, I mean, I feel like just was throughout the entire speech was this idea of the unconscious default. I don't remember exactly how he termed it, but just, you know, this idea that we're just on autopilot and not noticing it, and we're not really living life. We're just kind of going through motions and all this stuff. And he kind of commented on it multiple times, like, you guys don't know this yet, but this is what adulthood is like. And the crowd kind of chuckled or whatever. And then now, you know, 7 years later or whatever, like, not that I'm towards, you know, super old, but have worked in the workforce for 7 years, have married, have 3 kids, have a kid in school. I just feel like I had a better ability to, I think, relate to what he was actually hitting at. You know, because I feel like college is kind of romantic and you're hanging out with your friends and having great discussions and learning all kinds of stuff. And you make your own schedule and all this stuff. And then the day-to-day responsibilities of life hit once you become an adult and all the other stuff that comes with it. So I felt like I was better able to relate to his point, I think, which I do think he might have even said something like that in the speech, like pretty much you guys don't know it yet, but this is going to happen. So I just kind of felt like it was an interesting, like, thinking about my takeaways then versus now. I felt like I was just much able to relate much better to it.
So here's something that sort of like strikes me with what you said, Ross, and something that has sort of been on my mind as I, thought through the speech. Him referencing as like boredom and tediousness is really in many ways like being the substrate of life. Like, it is from this matrix of boredom and tedium that we are called to emerge from that default setting of self-involvement and et cetera, right? And the sort of like question that sort of prompts me from that like reflection is, how do you train yourself out of that? And he sort of gets that in the speech, right? Well, it's just being really intentional and really thinking critically about those other people. As I'm sure we'll touch on other ways, that gas guzzling patriarchal Christian who doesn't believe in climate change in front of you, that mom who's tired and yelling at her kids, the grocery store worker who like greets you with this just like deathly and empty hello, right? So that's sort of like the ways that he explains, he encourages the audience to break themselves out of that boredom and tedium. The things like how what we have today, obviously, that he did not have in 2005 when he gave the speech, was smartphones, for one thing. And it's like, boy, obviously smartphones don't do jack crap in helping you strengthen yourself to break yourself, to live in that boredom, but at the same time be able to break yourself out of it. One more thing before I cut myself off. For Lent this year, I'm not allowed to browse the internet or watch YouTube. Zero. Not even to like pick a song that I want to listen to on YouTube.
That's a lot.
And well, I don't know, sort of.
Maybe not for you.
But I don't know. It's like, I mean, I definitely spent more time than I should have on browsing the internet. Obviously I did to prep for the podcast, but like I was very intentional about that. But it's like, when you think about smartphones in that way, is that they are making you less able to be bored. Boy, like, man, that, I don't know. That's something that's sort of just one more layer onto that whole idea of smartphones and technology, and figuring out how to let them be a tool rather than chains. So,
yeah.
Do you think we're more bored now, or do you think our phones allow us to realize how bored we are? Or like just because phones fill that space, we struggle more with boredom because like under normal cell phone, internet browsing circumstances, like we can just like instantly like fill that gap. You know? I don't know. Because I feel like in some ways we're more acutely aware of boredom, but maybe not. I don't know.
It doesn't feel like we're bored when we're using them.
right.
And I think the absence of it, probably like some sort of addiction, if you didn't have it for like an hour or 2 hours, you know, you'd be like, oh, I need to go check this. I need to check that. And so you'd want it. But I think I think when you constantly do that, if you're in the grocery line and it's like, man, you know, if you were David Foster Wallace in 2004 in the grocery line, he just has a flip phone. He doesn't really text that much. And all he wants to do is like get home, have a nice meal, watch a little TV. And there's like all these obstacles in the way from like that satisfaction. And when we do it, I think we can like soothe ourselves. It's like, well, all right, this traffic light, phone, grocery line, phone. And it's kind of maybe we don't get as angry. Like we can just like plug into our little world and soothe our ego mentality, get entertained. It might be a little, I don't know, a bit different of a frustration that he expressed in this article because he didn't have a cell phone.
So, Ross, you're the only one who can answer this. Do you train your children to be bored? And obviously use it.
No. I mean, not in that way.
I mean, obviously have a broad definition here.
Right. So I would say yes and no. I mean, I read an article recently. It might have been Art of Manliness. I'm not sure. But it talked about how I don't know if it's like one of the Nordic countries, or it was kind of talking about like just children's education. And I've read some different things about it, like how, anyway, I'll get off on a tangent, I guess. But the point of it was like this article was talking about how like kids should go outside and spend time outside, like every day. Doesn't matter what the weather is, like you send kids outside to play on their own, and they have to like figure out what to do, because it's like they don't have toys in front of them to entertain them. They have to like, it's not only like go outside and get fresh air, it's like they have to be imaginative or make decisions and be independent of you and things like that. So I think I don't know, not as good as we should, but like try to incorporate that a little bit, like that idea. And then kind of similarly, like we do, like we actually just started this actually, but like they have to take like quiet time every day, but like they're not like napping, but like the point is just like, like, well, I'm not gonna entertain you right now. Like you have to go, you know, color, read, do whatever you want, but like it's not gonna be me doing something for you.
You know, it's like even like one more secular social function of church that I don't think I've ever heard before is like being bored, right? For kids, especially, right? Like, yeah, I mean, we're all kids.
Adapt, just giving them boredom exposure.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
yeah,
obviously for most, like it's, I sort of like get a little bit riled up when, people I'm familiar with are, you know, they like criticize the time they spent as like a child in church. Like, this is a waste of time. Like, what? Do you think you'd be a rocket scientist by now if you had not gone to church? Like, you look like about an average individual for your age. Like, what was the actual opportunity cost there? No, because even this is an interesting thought too. Well, okay, sorry, not to like build. No, here's another interesting thought coming from me. No, but like people who went to church as a child, but now like are sort of like militant or just like vaguely militant towards religion. Like there was a function there, even if they didn't necessarily turn out on the side of the coin, which we might think is better. There's still like value there because that particular individual believes that there is objective rightness to reality. And what is right and objective is that, well, you shouldn't spend time at church. You should spend time doing X, Y, or Z. In contrast with the individual who does not spend time bored in church growing up and contemplating things because they have nothing else to do. Where do they end up as an adult? Because why would they be militant towards religion? They've never been engaged with it in any way. They're just going to be like, no, I don't know. I mean, how much, whatever, right? And I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, that's like the definition of being a nun versus the atheist. Whereas like in my mind, I have a substantial amount of respect for like Sam Harris or Michael Shermer or Richard Dawkins because they believe in objective reality and objective morality, even if it's not mine, versus the nun who's like, well, I mean, whatever, you know. What do you guys think?
Sam Harris and Dawkins believe in objective morality?
I'm more familiar with Sam Harris, whom I would say yes. Really?
Did you say morality or reality, though?
Well, they're somewhat one and the same, but Sam Harris does morality. Yeah, I believe he is a moral objectivist.
I guess I'm not that familiar with him. Like maybe 2 debates and 1 or 2 podcasts. I did read a book of his, but I wouldn't have been able to say he was objectively moral with any confidence.
So anyway, just to like tidy up that thought so the audience doesn't completely lose it. The point there is that there's a lot of functionality to being bored that Foster Wallace emphasizes here, and I think is not well stressed today.
Yeah.
Talking about, like, to jump off you a little bit. Oh.
Well, I was going to counter that a little bit.
Just counter it. Just go. Just say it. Throw it down.
Yeah. So I remember I don't know who said this. I want to say I don't know who said it. But
wait, is it like a smart person or is it like one of us said it?
No. It was like a smart person. Smart person. I don't quote you guys, but
we should just start quoting ourselves.
It was something to the effect of like the saints were never bored, or something like that. Meaning that like because there was this like ever-present spiritual reality and this ever-present communion and like sense of mission, they were never bored in like the common sense of the word, like, oh, well, there's literally nothing to do, you know? I mean, I suppose it might come down to definition of boredom, because I'm sure there are points in time where they like wish they were entertained, you know, but yeah, I don't know. I guess like I might push back on that a little bit, because I don't know if it's boredom itself. I mean, I suppose maybe there's like the discipline of like entertaining yourself or the discipline of contemplation that might be taught in those circumstances, but and just like, yeah, I guess suppose having to wrestle with the boredom. But yeah, like I don't know if like the end goal is to be bored, but like the end goal maybe to have wrestled with that enough that and have a purpose in your life that like that boredom gets filled with something positive. Like, and I think that's kind of what he says, but like if you have like that sense of purpose and you have that deep sense of like life being meaningful, like it won't necessarily be boring, right? Because there's like a whole, you know, that grocery store that you're just trying to get through the line, like there are a bunch of souls there, you know, that are like acting out this, like, to some degree, dramatic story, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, I guess you kind of said it, but like, one of the lines, I forget it, I don't have it in front of me, but like that stuck out to me. But I think, like, I don't think he was saying boredom in itself is good so much as, like you said, like, it's more finding meaning in what superficially seems to be a boring moment. So, like, and I think that's probably why it seems like it's appropriate to give this speech to like a graduating class that's about to go, in their minds, conquer the world. Like, no, like, adulthood is full of, on the surface, boring, on the surface, boring, meaningless, just nothing, grocery store lines, things like that. So, like, what he argued, I thought pretty well, was like, no, you have to find there's meaning even in those moments, and when you can learn to live that way, you'll just be a lot happier person. Which is, yeah.
I don't think he uses these words, but it's like, just what inner dialogue, what voice or thoughts do you choose to be in control in these stressful moments? Like, yeah, you could see the, lane blocking SUV, pickup truck, and just be mad and they're aggressive and whatever. Or it's like, maybe they're in a rush and they had a horrific accident in a small car and, feel more comfortable in a big SUV. Like, you can take your own selfish vantage point, or a little bit what he's saying is like, put yourself in their shoes, and maybe they have an entirely possibly implausible good reason to do this or act like this. They're having a much more terrible day than you. And like, maybe, and you just, if you think that way, then you would offer them grace or friendliness or forgiveness. And it's just like a mental choice in your mindset.
So maybe to put like a finer point, can I just read that like sentence that we're sort of like talking around here regarding SUVs and such? Okay. This is sort of from the middle of the speech. I can spend time in the end of the day traffic jam being angry and disgusted at all the huge, stupid, lane blocking SUVs and Hummers and V12 pickup trucks burning their wasteful, selfish 40-gallon tanks of gas. And I can dwell on the fact that the patriotic or religious bumper stickers always seem to be on the biggest, most disgustingly selfish vehicles driven by the ugliest, most inconsiderate and aggressive drivers. There's actually more, but that gets to the point there of
wasn't that the part, if I remember correctly, that he was actually going through that like dialogue in an example of how not to act? And then, like, when he was saying it, like, the crowd started chuckling as if they're like agreeing with him, and he actually was like, no,
yes,
like, the crowd was like, they cheered that part. He was like, this is the part where I'm telling you not to act, and like that's the part they related to.
Yes.
Yeah.
That drove me nuts when they clapped, because you're exactly right. Like, he's making a point to not act, and they don't get it. They're like, yeah, those Bush disciples. Good so far.
It was a subtle point, though. Like, I kind of half picked up on that, but it wasn't clear who was making that point when he went into that description. He did correct it on the back, and he's like, no, you're not. Like, thinking like this is not the example. Like, you shouldn't think like this. You should figure out how to get out of this mindset and give them a reason that they need this big car.
Yeah, exactly. And something, I don't know, to put it in slightly different words, I was thinking about today that's, I think, on that exact point. And it references like Jordan Peterson's sort of like tension or juxtaposition between like the conservative and the liberal mindset, where conservatives tend to be a little bit more conscientious, liberals tend to be a little bit more open-minded. Well, like, you need both. And something that I've sort of been telling myself lately, if I feel like family or friends have not done what I've hoped that they've done, like to think that, Mike, you're not in their life. They can be killing it in some other virtue where you are just a piece of garbage in. That's I think it gets the exact same point. Like that's what you have to hone in on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To kind of jump into like a personal experience, then I feel like of when like I think I somewhat saw like in life what he's talking about was, so we've all done Exodus 90, which to the fans that don't know what that is, it's pretty much a 90-day spiritual exercise where you don't give in to all these comforts or luxuries. So you don't drink alcohol, you don't eat snacks, you don't snack between meal, you don't eat dessert, you take cold showers. It's just a lot of like self-denial type stuff. But I remember one of my takeaways after that was how, like, I think I kept thinking, man, I like how distracted I was before. So like how many moments during the day where, you could look out the window and like look at a tree that is like real, it's in front of you, or you could glance at your cell phone and like look at someone's Facebook picture, and I mean, you could just take that point any which way you wanted. And just how much, like you said, how much time we spend browsing on phones. And I've kind of thought about like, that's just kind of, I mean, it's okay, I guess, everyone, to spend some time just relaxing or whatever. But like, it's almost like wasting your life because you're not really engaging with like reality. So I've kind of had that thought, like that was just a thought of mine after the Exodus 90 program was like, man, we just distract ourselves so much. Like I'm in the car, I got to turn the music on. I just can't sit in silence, and like, I don't know, it's just interesting to me because I think that it's the other moments that are literally like real life. And it's almost like I think of it as like the Matrix. Like it's almost like we choose to put ourselves in the Matrix as opposed to just living life.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting to think about. So obviously in the films, The Matrix, like from what I remember, people didn't choose to be in the Matrix. Like they just were. But now we choose to be in the Matrix.
Not only do we choose, we like pay for it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Which, to get back to DFW, I feel like it's kind of like because we do that because like life is hard, like there are, again, superficially, there are boring, meaningless, I'm mad at that lady, like life it's not necessarily, not every moment of it is as grandiose as we want it to be. So it's like our inability to live well in those moments drives us seemingly to, like Matt said, pay to live in the Matrix. So it seems like he's giving a way out of that life, I guess.
I'm actually thinking of like probably 2 other DFW articles, and even how David Foster Wallace is like most cited in other books kind of gets to that point of like, even in 1994, whenever he wrote Infinite Jest, like Infinite Jest is like this, no one's ever read it, but everyone's read the review of it. It's like this just dense, sarcastic, ironic look at like what is the most exasperated, end of the line version of like how commercialized and how commercialized a society could be that maximizes like pleasure and desensitizes pain, I think is what it's all about. And that runs through like a lot of his writing, just like warning, even before, I guess it'd be kind of interesting. He probably died right before the iPhone, or right as like the first iPhone came out. And like the thing that was the most dangerous in his mind, existed probably like 8 months before he took his life. And so, I mean, imagine like everything he wrote about kind of predicted how bad this could get, and it's probably met it or exceeded it. And he somehow understood that better than anyone else. And I don't know exactly how I'll wrap this up, other than I've just been fascinated broadly about this speech. How I'm in this program about faith and work, and we're reading like a lot of different books, just chapters of them, and this speech is referenced so much, even in Christian works, of just like, hey, here's a vantage point that is kind of relevant, and how to like point yourself back to the gospel or whatnot. And he's had a lasting effect that maybe is because of the way he died, but he was getting at some truths here for as a warning label to modern society to, like, you know, not get distracted with all this stuff. Yeah.
I think I referenced this. I don't know. I didn't fill the outline very quickly, but like I like the idea that he presents of, avoiding this unconscious default state. But I think where I kind of balked at what he thought was he didn't seem to present. He literally said it.
Agree.
Like I can't find the quote, so I'm not going to try. But he pretty much said, like, you get to pick where the meaning is. Like, he kind of, like, it's interesting. Like, he negatively spoke about how we make ourselves the center of the universe, right? He had that portion where he kind of talked about people tend to, every sort of thing we relate to ourselves. So we're always at the center. And I just felt like he kind of spoke about it negatively, how we always place ourselves at the center of the universe, which I think is a good point. But then he also kept saying, like, you get to pick the meaning. It's like, you get to find the meaning in this. And he almost seemed to be putting it on the individual to decide what's meaningful and what's not, and why it's meaningful. Which that was the point I think I kind of disagreed with, because it's like, well, as a Catholic, like, I believe, like, the meaning is outside of myself. It comes from God. You know what I mean? So,
right.
Like, I don't think I agree. Like, in that point, I didn't agree with him. Where it got to from it, this idea of avoiding the unconscious default state, I totally agree with. But I just kind of thought it was interesting how he seemingly presented in a negative way, making yourself the center of the universe, but then pretty much said you get to decide all the meaning in the universe, which is a lot of power to give to a person, So I don't know. That just kind of struck me.
Can one of us find the where? I don't know. That'd be worth, because I
found the part that Ross was just referencing here. Should we read it?
Because I would, go ahead and read it, and I might have a counterpoint towards the end.
What page on the outline is it, Mike?
It's I just did the classic Control F.
Can find.
If you just Control search, not that the mystical stuff's necessarily
I think you're looking at a
true.
different part than I'm talking about. I'll read it.
But Landon read this already.
Here is just one example of the total wrongness of something I tend to be automatically sure
you get to. Okay.
Everything in my own immediate experience supports my deep belief that I am the absolute center of the universe, the realest, most vivid, and important person in existence. We rave sort of natural, basic self-centeredness because it is so socially repulsive. But it's pretty much the same for all of us. It is our default setting, hardwired into our brains at birth. And he kind of goes on, but I feel like that's the part I was referencing about the negative speak about making ourselves the center of the universe.
Yeah. I counter that. Well, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this particular way, I mean, he was sort of being mainstream and appealing to what's popular, right? Because to say something like, oh, there is an objective reality to the universe, and it is this. Even if he says in this really general way, that's just not trendy. That's not cool. That's not whatever. So that's I think where he's coming from with the you get to decide what the meaning is, right? It still leaves everyone feeling like, oh yeah, yeah. Snap my fingers, David. But of course, he leads into it like with these very objective things that just really resonate in the hearts of people, right? Because he describes, the overworked mom who's yelling at her child in this really sort of repulsive way. Like, people hear that, at least I hear it. I'm sure it's the same for you guys. I'm sure it was for a substantial fraction of those people. They heard that and they're like, whoa, that's very real. Like, I've been that mom before, or that dad before, for that matter. It's only the value to that portion of the speech isn't you get to decide what the meaning is. It's that we're all saying whoa when he's describing the drama that's happening with the mom who's yelling, or dad who's yelling at her child or his child unfairly.
Yeah. I think he does put a sharper point on it. You go to if you can click on my little initial on the top, and that'll show you where my cursor is, what I'm about to read. Towards the end of the speech, he's like, there's all kinds of freedom, and the kind that is most precious, you'll not hear much talk about the outside world of wanting and achieving. The really important kind of freedom involves attention and awareness and discipline, and being able to truly care about other people and to sacrifice for them over and over in myriad, petty, unsexy ways every day. That is real freedom. That is being educated and understanding how to think. So that's like as he's wrapping it up. And I don't think that's unclear or unmoored from like, oh, choose any kind of meaning you want. Like, he does say this is probably it. And I think that is true.
And well, shortly before he gets to that section, he goes over like the quote is, the only choice is we get to worship, or we get to choose what we worship. And an outstanding reason for choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship. And he lists off, the gods or, religions or various things throughout the world, is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive.
Right. Yeah. That was a good quote.
Then he talks about money. He talks about power, your body and your sexual, all these different things, and how basically none of them will ever satisfy you. So like he does, I don't think he says you get to choose the meaning entirely, like in this completely radically kind of solipsistic world. I think it's more or less like you can choose like the like to find meaning in these kind of superficial things. But like really, like you need to find meaning in something or like, I guess the true meaning is in something transcendent, right? To just keep things general, because he wouldn't say, well, he might say God. I mean, he does say God or some type of God thing, I suppose like his personal thing is kind of up in the air a little bit, but yeah, like I think he makes a stand, like it's not a very defined stand in terms of like, yeah, like Christianity or like, Islam or whatever. But he at least makes the distinction of like transcendent and like very temporal, superficial thing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
No, you gave me the floor last. Well, okay, if you're gonna switch topics then. So here's where I'll push back against Mr. Wallace here is like, we all basically agree with where he's going in terms of this self-awareness, which is connected to something transcendental, empathetic, compassionate, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, well, this goes back to something that I'd asked earlier is, how do you inculcate, though? It's like, come on, how many people are going to disagree with what he's saying here? Well, I mean, obviously some people just didn't get it because they were cheering for him when he was criticizing Christians driving SUVs. But like, how do you inculcate that? Because so many of us inculcate it, and I'm putting air quotes up, but like,
what? Define the word.
What do you inculcate?
Yeah.
Oh, how do you like cultivate within yourself?
Okay.
So many of us inculcate cultivate within yourself through like YouTube videos. Like I remember us referencing another episode, Lane. Like we all love like 5 minutes that will change the rest of your life on YouTube. It's like, yeah, those are fun and they're speaking generally real and true things.
Only males watch YouTube though too.
Yeah,
all the females are looking at words on Instagram and images. YouTube's just male.
But it's like it's little more than, pardon the crudeness, but it's just like existential porn. Essentially, it makes you feel good for like the 3 minutes after the video, and then there's nothing to it.
Yeah,
and it's like we'd like to say, as I mean, not to build ourselves up, but we have to sort of make a point here as people who take very seriously, like, you go to church every Sunday. I mean, and as Catholics, you go to confession, at least several times a year, and you believe that you're doing something so bizarre as consuming God. Like, these things are relatively constantly on your mind. They like bring you to the edge of reality, which I dare say is the only realistic, feasible way that you can inculcate these things that Foster Wallace is putting forth. You cannot inculcate them through YouTube videos or snapping your fingers to David Foster Wallace speeches.
Hold on. All right.
Okay.
Let me try to summarize that.
Okay.
Don't use the word inculcate.
The core essence, what you said was the core message of DFW's speech went right over everyone's heads because they don't have the depth of the Christian faith.
That's not exactly the direction I was going. That's not like off point or inaccurate. I was more along the lines of how virtually no one is going to disagree with like the conclusions about what.
So they'd all agree with them, but they wouldn't change the way.
They wouldn't change the way, or I'm positing, how do you change the way? And this goes back to what I was saying in different podcasts of the codification problem. Do you guys remember me referencing this?
In our least listened to podcast?
I don't know.
The one for silver members.
I don't know. Like when I am in, hold on. I'm going to take a minute. You can cut it out later.
Okay.
Eventually, finally, you get all of your supper supplies, except now it turns out there aren't enough checkout lanes open. And even though it's the end of the day rush, so that the checkout line is incredibly long, which is stupid and infuriating, but you can't take the fury out on the frantic lady working the register. Anyway, you finally get to the checkout line's front and pay for your food and wait to get the check or card authenticated by the machine. And then you get told, "Have a nice day," in a voice that is the absolute voice of death. And then you have to take your creepy, flimsy plastic bags into the crowded, bumpy parking lot to load the bags in your car that everything's going to fall out and roll around in the trunk, and you get home and have to take them inside. Like, that whole like half hour process in real life, like it is annoying. And when I am in that moment and I'm just like, man, this is like 45 minutes, an hour of just like, I don't know. I've felt that before, and I don't reference like a Bible passage or a psalm to calm me down. I'm like, oh, like I remember like the DFW speech, like this is the hard part of life, and these people around me are like in the moment, and I shouldn't be that sped up and thoughtful. And my main reference point for like taking it in, it is this speech. And like, because he like laid it out. So every time I stop and think a little bit about in that moment, I reference this first to like taking it. So I think it could land in hearts.
Okay, that fair rebuttal, but I'm gonna have another rebuttal here. Okay, so for the great Landon, he just needs to go to church with David Foster Wallace every few weeks.
I'm just saying, like, it's a very good example of modern frustrations that.
Well, yeah, obviously, yeah. But what I'm getting at is, okay, not inculcate, but how do you internalize what I'm saying, what he's saying? And what I'm saying is that it's because as David Foster Wallace is saying, it's like, oh no, I'm not about like telling you how to live or virtue, but like you are, because you're giving the speech, right? And we agree that's a great message. This is fantastic. But how do you, if you can't internalize it, if you can't codify it, then it's almost as if it's like it never even happened, hardly. And what I'm saying, you internalize it through this very complex isn't the right word, but like comprehensive and vibrant and layered and texture experience of religion, and with disciplined religion and existential thought like that. I truly believe, and we all essentially do, that is the only way. Yeah. So, okay.
So you're criticizing his self-deprecating reference to like, oh, I'm not telling you how to live. Oh, I'm not doing this. Mm-hmm. And then the next words out of his mouth are like literally saying how to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's who he was. That's who he was. And further, like, yeah, you can't project morals onto people in like liberal academia. So like just peppering all of your moral peppering with like, I'm not doing this, but I'm doing this. Like that's just like required fodder for that world, I assume. Like,
I mean, you guys don't have to listen to me, but I'm just saying. Inculcate it if you want.
It's interesting because, like, I mean, I kind of thought about this, and like that line Landon read a little bit ago about, to sacrifice in little unsexy ways or whatever, how he said it. He's kind of stating in secular terms, like the whole idea of like the little way of Saint Therese, right? So Saint Therese talks about how it's not through like grand gestures or anything that we become holy. It's by doing small acts with great love. So, like, yeah, if somebody's a jerk to you, like, smile at them. Like, that's a really difficult thing to do, and it's incredibly small. But, like, learning how to do that in, like, small ways throughout the day is huge. So, like, for me, like, understanding, like, yeah, like, if my wife's having a really hard day, like, just simply doing the dishes is the most important thing I'm going to do that whole day. Or just, like, small things like that. And so, like, we believe that's, like, actually, like, a path to holiness. He was able to do it in kind of a funny, secular way, then give a pretty similar message. So I think in some ways that might almost add weight to the truth of the message. Is like, oh yeah, you've got a nun 100 years ago that says this, and now you've got this kind of hip liberal arts writer in modern day US that's saying kind of the same thing. And like if it can resonate with that many different types of people, there's got to be something there.
Yeah.
That just inspired me. I don't have the right saint, but there was a prayer of a saint on the wall in his bathroom at the end of the tour.
Huh.
Was it the St. Francis prayer, I think?
That Jesse Eisenberg read aloud. That was I don't know if it was actually
Where
in his
there's
bathroom.
hatred, let me so love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. No.
Oh, yeah. I do remember that.
It was Saint Ignatius, I think. Lord, teach me to be generous. Teach me to serve you as you deserve. Teach me to give and not count the cost, to fight and not heed the wounds, to toil and not seek for rest, to labor and not ask for reward, save that of knowing that I do your will.
Do you guys think, I'm just going to say it, I've been thinking it for 10 minutes. I don't want a podcast scared.
Oh, yeah.
What up, dog?
So his whole message is like, I don't mean to laugh because we're getting into kind of deeper thoughts here, but like the whole thing is about like how to look at life appropriately and meaningfully and like the right way so you don't go drive yourself crazy. Like, does the fact that he committed suicide take away, do you think, from anything that he says? Because like, and again, I'm not trying to do this and like, I'm not trying to at all talk poorly about the man. I mean, that's not what I'm trying to say, but just like when, like, it almost seems like the ideas he's presenting is how to avoid, wanting to end your life. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. And then the fact that he did it seems almost, I don't know. I don't know if I worded the question right or if that's even the right question to ask, but.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably the big question or the main question. I think factually in the interview with his wife that I did read, he was on he was on like one or two of the main depression drugs for like decades. And then did get off of those. And it happened like several weeks or several months like after that. So I think he had struggled with that all his life and primarily used medication to fix it, but after stopping it, things got dicey pretty quick.
And I would say, like, at least to me, the only way that would take away from the message is if you didn't really like have a whole, like, if he hadn't like read any of his other stuff, or if he hadn't had like at least some sort of inkling for like just how attentive he was to things and how everything just seemed to deeply affect him. Like, you can't write in like the amount of detail that he writes without like kind of having things affect you differently and in a magnified way. And I just feel like that type of personality, like, I don't know, seems to be prone to like, just evil things happening to them and just kind of being kind of overcome, I guess. Not in like overcome in a way that like they failed, but just overcome in a way that like life just different things and their thoughts and everything else just affects them and moves them to do dramatic things.
This would be a really unfounded perspective and question that probably isn't fair, but like if you I imagine I'm pretty sure he's a really smart dude. I imagine he tested very high IQ on the IQ test, and like if you're that smart and think so deeply about the essence of life and probably have a struggle with like mental depression, biologically in some fashion, if you like add all those three things and don't quite give yourself to Jesus, God, a religion, like that's probably that's just a recipe for a struggle. It seems to me like to be that smart, to ask that sophisticated depth of question and to not quite just like surrender at all. It's probably difficult.
Yeah, and I mean, to answer my own question, I don't think I worded my question how I wanted it to be, but like I think he kind of answered it in a little bit in the speech. Like I guess I wasn't trying to, and I don't think you guys probably thought I was, but like I wasn't trying to say like, oh, he's a fraud, you know. It was more like it's just an interesting dynamic, you know, and I kind of like it in the sense that he seems very genuine. Like you have all those people that you see, these are the 5 ways to change your life, and I'm so happy now, and all this stuff. But it's like in reality, they probably have their own problems and stuff too. It's like if we kind of make it seem as if, oh, they figured it out, they're happier, everything's great, like that just doesn't seem like a very real perspective on life. Where he actually said it, it was one of the things I liked better in his talk. At one point, he said like, "This is," I don't remember how he worded it, but he pretty much said, "This is really, really hard to do." So like he kind of said like, "This is the answer," but like it's really, really tough. And I kind of like, I don't know, I that resonated with me. Because I think even for myself, like, admittedly, like I would tell you, oh yeah, there is, like I've said earlier, there is this, supernatural and eternal meaning to just doing the dishes for my wife if I just do it with the right, disposition.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm ticked off half the time when I have to do it. So like, it doesn't mean that, I just that part stuck with me. Like I thought it seemed very genuine there, like that he seems to be onto something, but then he didn't. He admitted how hard it is to actually do it.
And that's why I think, to me, it just, I don't know. It's like he had the right answer without, trusting in Jesus and finding God. Like, I don't know. I don't know where to go with that, but
yeah. No, I mean the suicide not so much doesn't really undermine the significance of what he said. The things that sort of do more genuinely, sort of like, oh boy, that makes you sort of wonder. I was reading on his personal life section of the Wikipedia page, cited comments, mind you. Apparently, in the early 1990s, Wallace was in a relationship with writer Mary Carr. She described Wallace as obsessive and said the relationship was volatile. Wallace once threw a coffee table at her and forced her out of the car, leaving her to walk home. And Wallace's biographer, D.T. Max, did report some of this abuse, so it did definitely happen. And Miss Carr, in response to this particular biography, tweeted, "That's about 2% of what happened." Which seems to indicate that there was a even more significant amount of abuse that took place. So, that more, because I mean, obviously, any kind of abuse. See, that's harder for me to sort of reconcile. Like, oh, well, they're complex. Like, come on, really? Like, I mean, abuse is abuse. So,
no, I mean, we're not saying he's like on a pedestal or anything.
No, I know. I'm just adding texture here, though. Conversation.
I had never heard that though, but given how much he struggled with a lot of things and was, I don't know, he did a lot of rehab. I imagine he had a few demons here and there.
Yeah, at the same time, though, I mean, this is a fairly like modern point too, with regards to like cancel culture. People are like very complex where they can believe something right and good to some extent, but do really like evil things. I remember like once, well, I was sort of like making this point and then talked about it like some years later in theology class. There's like this one student when I was teaching, she said something like, she was trying to get at the idea that like she didn't like need religion because she was a pretty good person, but what you hear a lot. But what I sort of like hear when people say that is sort of like, well, not saying like I'm a pretty good person, but like I'm a pretty genial person, right? Like you just have like a sort of like positive vibe to you. And there's this image from Time Life magazine's top 100 images of the 20th century. And there's this image of Hitler like hanging out with his buddies, and he's like doing some sort of like stupid jig or something. He has like this grin on his face, just like any person who's messing around with his friends. And I have to like know, like that was not the one time that like Hitler ever smiled. Like you have to believe, if you're anyone with a brain, that he was a somewhat normal person who laughed and smiled and dare say was like a good father, even at times in small ways. I know I'm going to be canceled, but the point that I'm making here is that people can be horrendously evil, as in Hitler's case. And even in like some other like extremist Islamic like terrorists, referencing actually something from This American Life. But they can still express goodness in these other small parts of their life. And I think that's a hard thing for modern people to reconcile to some extent. That like for President Putin in this case, it's like, yeah, I mean, we need to smother that guy to every extent possible. And it's like, no, we don't see a picture of him like at an anti-racist protest and like forgive him. Like, no. Sorry, I had to make.
And I would say the opposite of that, of like like these terrible people are capable of these like very like congenial moment. Like the opposite is true. Like people who seem to live in this like congenial persona that doesn't make them good.
Yeah.
It just means you're friendly and amicable.
Yeah.
And you haven't made any enemies, which means like you probably haven't done much good either.
Yeah. That's good. Like, that's more what I was getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, so there's this random like blessing Claire and I came across that was in like, I don't know, Genesis somewhere. I don't know. But like the blessing that like Abraham gives his daughter. I can't remember if it's Abraham or if it's Abraham's son's given, whatever. Someone's giving to their daughter or sister, is may your descendants live to see may your descendants possess the gates of their enemies. Which is like, I don't know. It seems like a weird thing to say to someone like when they get married. Like, yeah, may your descendants like destroy other people. Like, but yeah, it's like, shoot, like this isn't like may your descendants be really popular and not offend anyone. It's like, no, like if you're going to do good, like we know for sure there's evil in the world and like there's evil people and like they probably won't like you for that. So yeah, I guess like the opposite is true. And I think that like he actually communicates that really well to some degree in this speech, and that like, or I guess maybe not in this speech, but I think just in a lot of his critiques in society, just about criticizing like the dangers of a decadent and comfortable lifestyle. And, kind of that's to some degree like contributes to our living in water, and keeps us from like having to choose and interact and engage in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Because if you just live in the like congenial water where you're going along and getting along, like that's an evil in itself to some degree.
Yep.
I was just you kind of spoke about evil, but like I feel like suffering is an interesting thing. We've kind of broached upon in similar ways, but like I think most people that have lived some life will acknowledge that like suffering is part of life, and like unwillingness to accept that and like create any possible comfort to protect us from it in some ways like stops us from actually living life too. I don't know, just that I kind of had that thought whenever you said like evil, but like suffering doesn't necessarily, it's not always like caused by a directly evil person. It can just be, I fell and broke my leg and it hurts really bad. And now I can't play this basketball game I wanted to play. Yeah, no, you can make up any situation. And I don't know, it just are like, we talked a little bit about like plugging out from life. And then there's like into the fake. And then there's also like, I don't know, just this unwillingness to embrace certain parts of it too.
I'm gonna move to wrap us up with a question here. So we're all young. We're actually super young. Like we're like 32 or less.
We're 12 and 13.
So
and
so
12.
we're four young fish, really, swimming along here, and we're all talking, and an older man passes us by and asks us how the water, and we say, what the heck is water? As 32-year-old men, what would possibly be our water that we don't even know what we're swimming in today? Now, I'm not don't reference your college version and what water was then that you've now figured out, like what could possibly be, and it's a hard question, so maybe a couple of us don't have the answer. But what would possibly be our water today that we don't realize is such an essence to our daily lives? And
Okay, so I'm already breaking the rule of not referencing our past selves, but I think it's sort of an interesting point to make. I would say that in college it was like my like general obnoxiousness was like the water I was in without realizing it, and I'm extraordinarily grateful to various men in my life, some of whom on this podcast at various moments, who have called me out on it. Because there's other people I've seen in my life who did not have that, and they are still obnoxious despite being 12 and 13 years old like us. I mean, no, but yeah, being older, obviously. And it's like, man, that's and it requires obviously such courage to call a friend out on that. I've at times been the caller outer, and at times I've been the one calling out, and there's no economic reason for it. It's just finding that courage to say what needs to be said and changing someone's life. And it's like, man, so short and sweet. That's what I got.
I'm having a hard time because, like, I had a couple ideas, but I think I might have, because, like, what he talks about is water is the stuff that's, like, really good and true and meaningful.
Yeah.
But, like, I think I immediately kind of thought of that as, like, oh, what are the things that distract you from what's good and true and meaningful?
I mean, I think it's sort of both, right? It's that stuff that you're in without realizing it's there. So that could be good, that could be bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm going to articulate. Oh, sorry, Matt. You go. Matt, go.
No, you got it, Ross.
All right, thanks.
You.
And now I'm really nervous. I was going to say, like, I was also thinking of the negative, like what's preventing me from really seeing reality, And I was going to say just like, and I don't know, maybe you guys don't struggle with this or haven't, but I bet that people can relate. Like the perspective that we're always trying to look at situations like from outside of ourselves, because we're so we're so caught up in what someone else is gonna think. Does that make sense? So like we aren't
Mm-hmm.
like I know I've struggled with that in the past. Like, what's my water? Like sometimes maybe unaware of that I'm doing it, but a tendency to not like just be present genuinely in the moment because that I have a concern, or I'm looking like the perspective I'm looking at it is too concerned with what someone else is going to take out of it. Does that make sense? So like if I'm having a conversation with someone, I'm not thinking just like, yeah, don't podcast scared, talk. There's always the thought of what's this person going to think of that? Are they going to think it's funny? Like, I mean, just that type of idea bounce around in your head is, I think, hard to escape from.
Pretty good. Yeah, just what people think. I think, so what is water? What's hidden? So the definition of the way he describes it is, do everything with a simple awareness of what is so real and so essential, so hidden in plain sight all around us all the time that we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over, this is water. This is water. I would say one, this is a theme that runs through his writing, and I think that's hard to do in like perhaps America or upper class America. Like we live in the top 1% of 1% of like global economic status, and we're in every part of our lives, it's like, what can we buy on Amazon next? Or like, what's the best food? And like the level of like richness and wealth and just optionality and like perhaps consumerism or products, like you can take it for granted. You can write it off. It's like, well, I want the best for my family, or like I'm doing much less than other people. I don't know. I think some of the water around us is just like, even in the last 10 years or a generation or 2 generations, like you go back 2 generations and they didn't have anything that we use every day. I think the level of just stuff, technology just overwhelms us as water, that like thinking about, well, how was it, how did our grandpa and grandma do this? Like that, this would all be water to them. Like every single second of the day would be water. That they would be like very present of, and we would not have any idea about. And I don't reflect on that a lot, but I think a little bit, and just being grateful for how easy and productized so many things are that are probably water in this context.
So if water is like what is meaningful but hidden and so obvious it's hard to see, like honestly, like my marriage is water, like it's this big beautiful thing, and I succeed in small ways, but like I fail like a lot. And yeah, I mean, and I think that's something that, technology is a big barrier. Like I would say even sports is a big barrier. There's one time I was explaining some like sports story to Claire.
You were mansplaining?
I was just telling her about it. Yeah, I was telling her about it, and she was like, "Matt, this sounds like Teen Vogue for old guys," And it's like, crap, you're right, and I think that's, yeah. I mean,
super relevant for this NCAA weekend in
yeah,
basketball that we're in right now.
Yeah, no, it's a real thing, and yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's bread and circus stuff, like it's not dissimilar. technology, of course. And, but yeah, like my marriage is the water and my son is the water, and it's like, especially as an infant, because he's not like engaging directly, like you kind of have to, if you goof around with him enough, maybe you get him to laugh, but, he doesn't really like go out of his way to seek you per se, besides just crying and just, whatever.
Right.
You're obviously doing something wrong, Matt. I mean, he should be discipled by someone by now. Yeah, no, there is something interesting about that touches on something I've thought about before, where it's like there is a certain like place for like agnosticism towards life. And I think it's exactly what you're getting at there, where recognizing like, yeah, there's some good things I do in my marriage as a father, but there are some ways that I fail that I'm maybe like sort of vaguely aware of, sort of not. In that man, I think a lot of us like don't like to live that way. We like to know that, yeah, no, I'm a pretty good person. I'm probably going to heaven. Whereas like, well, no, I think a better way to live is like, I hope I go to heaven, but I honestly don't know. Like, it's the same way like with more superficial things like running a race. Are you more confident in the guy or girl who's going to run a great race? Who's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to run a great race. They're like, I've had some good training. I think I might run well today. Things might go bad. I don't know. We're going to see what happens. Like that, there's something about that attitude which seems a lot more consistent with the forces of reality.
Quick thought, because I had one more answer that just popped into my head that I thought was interesting. Like, to the fish, and again, not that I want to get too caught up in the fish, but like the water.
What kind of fish were
like
they?
The water was necessary for their.
I will make you fishers of men. Like I think DFW's really. He's alluding to the Gospels.
Yeah,
right
like it's
here.
necessary. The water is necessary for their existence, for their survival, right? So like just God himself, like just his existence, his presence, I think in a lot of ways is like it envelops us, it's all around us, it literally sustains us and keeps us alive. And there's a lot of people that would be like, what are you talking about? Like God's not real. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like I might sound like the little fish in a way, but like a lot of people in the world would believe that, you know what I mean? So like, just his existence or not is an interesting, like if he's real, a huge percent of the population that, denies or isn't sure, like are living in water and have no idea. But if he's not real, a huge percentage of the population are also living in water because they like, you know what I mean? It's just like either way, that question about God being real or not, like puts a large amount of people in some water.
I think that's the ultimate meta take of this. Like, yeah. Ooh, you brought it home, Ross.
Yeah, that's great. Nice. Speaking of Ross, I think he has the next episode.
Yeah.
We don't even know what the speech series is.
It's going to be hard to announce.
We've been drowning in our own success, collecting our commission checks that we've forgotten about the fans, and we're sorry about that. So we're gonna let you know, but we can guarantee that it's gonna be Ross. As he finished greatly this episode, he's gonna bring us back in 3 weeks.
Better place. Hey, yeah. To a better place.
Landon, anything to share? This is sharing time.
Sharing time. We are expecting a baby boy in September.
Heck yeah, man.
I was gonna tell you over a campfire, but you just like put me on the spot such that I
Not really.
I can't hold that news back.
You're right. I did know, and I talked with Lauren, and we thought it was time for you to share it.
I'll propose a cheers.
Holy smokes, man.
Cheers.
Heck yeah.
Let me.
Wow.
Gosh, I wish I was drinking better stuff.
Cheers.
That's big stuff. Wow, congratulations. When in
Thank you.
September?
Basically right on our anniversary date.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Cute.
All right.
Are you ticked that Matt stole the name Abraham already? So you can't be Abraham Lincoln free?
We Lincoln is a family name in her family.
Wow.
Oh.
We can talk about it this weekend, but her grandpa did deep. He's got a whole genealogy book going back like 400 years with like cited materials, but it was like cool to look through all the old family names.
That's cool. Can we share that with people, or is it like is it kind of like, don't tell anybody?
Nope, it's shareable. It's
nice.
Yep.
Oh, this is gonna be big for our audience.
Can we put it on the Speech
let them feel
Guys
part
Facebook
of it
page? Because that's gonna get us a lot of action.
And can we make it twins? Can we make it?
It sells better.